how to stop chasing damage cases. In this video, I'm gonna tell you how to stop going after damaged, emotionally unavailable men. It's Sabrina, your personal love advisor from A New Mode, the channel where we show you how love actually works. So I've spoken a little bit about damage cases in some of my other videos and in my articles, and a lot of you want to know more about it. So here it is. A damage case is my term for a guy that has the potential to be good, but he is buried under a pile of issues. It could be emotional issues, oftentimes it's commitment issues, but the point is he is not dateable right now. He's basically the bad boy that needs to be saved. And in the movies, there is always the good girl who is the counter to the bad boy, and she does succeed in saving him from himself and changing him and getting him to be that good guy that everyone knew that he could be, and she really actualized that potential and drew it right out of him. This isn't the movies. This is real life. And that's rarely how it unfolds with these damage cases. In real life, the good girl with those good intentions ends up with nothing but a broken heart. Anyway, this is gonna be a really fun video. I'm gonna tell you the truth about why you keep going after those types of guys and how to stop. So make sure you watch this video all the way until the end. Real quick, if you like this video and find it helpful, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any relationship content. And speaking of relationship content, make sure to get on our amazing newsletter, anewmode.com/subscribe. The link is down below. That is where Eric is my partner on A New Mode. It's where we share our best content, personal stories, you get male, female perspective. It's great. You guys are gonna love it. And also follow me on Instagram so we can be friends on there. I do tons of Q&As, lots of relationship lessons of the day. So follow me there at A New Mode. Okay, so the format of this video is gonna be a little different than my other videos because I am gonna use a personal story to illustrate a larger point, and then I'm gonna tell you how it applies to you. My classic story of a damage case is a guy that I call Kevin. So he and I met through an online dating site. We matched on some site, but it turned out that we had a lot of mutual friends in common. So after we matched, I asked around about him a bunch, and everyone pretty much said the same thing. Oh, Kevin, he's great, he's awesome, he's a great guy, but he can't commit. He finds something wrong with every girl and he has commitment issues. And in my mind, I thought, well, ding, 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 you said the magic words right there, challenge accepted. So he and I went out and we had an amazing first date. And I went out with him after a series of horrible dates. You know that feeling when you're just so drained and just every guy is just such a dud and you are just like in pain during the dates. You know those dates where it's like you have a drink and then he orders another drink and you're just like, no, I just want to get out of here. That was happening to me a lot. And all of a sudden I go out with Kevin and he is cute and he is charming and he has fun, and I just didn't want the date to end, and that hadn't happened to me in such a long time. So we have this great first date, texting a little bit in between. I think that we had some sort of group hangout in between because we had a lot of mutual friends. We go out again. The second date was we went to brunch on a Sunday, and at the end of the date, like, he left no indication of if I would ever hear from him again. He wasn't like, let's do this again. He wasn't like, I'll call you later. He was just kind of like, all right, bye, have a good rest of your Sunday. And I had that very familiar feeling of unease, that feeling of like, okay, I have no control here. I'm just waiting for him to choose me. I'm just waiting for him to, you know, decide that I'm worthy of going on a third date with him. And every day that passed that I didn't hear from him, it was just like this knife twisting further and further. I mean, I barely knew him at that point, but I was just so excited by the potential of what could be. So then after, I don't know how many days, 4 or 5 days, he called me and I was just so excited to be hearing from him again. And so we're chatting, whatever, the usual. And then he was like, you know, I think that we might be better off as friends. And it just completely knocked me sideways. So he wanted to call me and say that because, you know, we had a lot of mutual friends. We would most likely be running into each other. And I just felt completely devastated. I mean, crushed. And this relationship was 2 dates long. So I felt like a fool for being so upset about it. But at the same time, I was really upset about it. But time went on, about 2 months went by, and then I was gonna be going to this party and I knew that he was gonna be there. So I made sure to look amazing and I made sure to, you know, play my cards right and make sure he saw me talking to other guys. And then our paths crossed and we started talking, and he and I had just electric chemistry, as you often do with those damage cases. There's always electric chemistry with them. So we're talking and I can tell that he wants me, that he's really aching for me. So we end up making out, he ends up coming over to my apartment, and we end up talking, like really talking. Like he really was sharing himself with me, and I just felt really close and connected to him. And just in looking back, I mean, I know I'm glad things happen the way they do because, you know, it made me the person I am today and blah, blah, blah. And like I have all these stories to look back on. But I want wanna like go back in time and shake my former self. Like, why would you do that when he dumped you after 2 dates and then you see him and you just give in to him, you know? And we all have experiences like that, but even just in the retelling of the story, like I just wanna be like, why? Have some self-respect. Anyway, that night, when I was talking to him, I just realized that he is exactly the type of guy that I always go for. He's charming, he's charismatic, but I couldn't have him because no one could. Just based on the stories he was telling me about his previous relationships and girlfriends. I mean, at this point, I was a pretty well-established relationship writer. Like, I knew what I was doing. I knew what to look out for. It was very clear to me that this guy had some serious commitment issues, like deeply rooted commitment issues. And while I could see that clearly, I desperately wanted to be the woman that would inspire him to commit. Damage cases are like a pair of super sexy shoes that are brutally uncomfortable. When you look at them, they're amazing. You have to have them. And they look incredible. But you're in agony when you're in those shoes. But then when you take them off, it's euphoric. You feel this unbelievable sense of relief. But that amazing feeling isn't because you're gaining something positive, it's the absence of something negative. And that's what it's like to be in a relationship with a damage case. When you're with him, you're on edge. You never know when the rug is just gonna be pulled out from under you. You have no idea where you really stand with him. It doesn't feel good. But then he does something or he says something or you have an amazing time together and it feels amazing. It feels euphoric. But it's really just because he took away that pain you were feeling when you were like, does he like me? Does he not? How does he feel? I don't know. So that's what it is. And you become addicted to that taking off the shoes feeling. And even though I knew all the signs, I could recognize what was in front of me, I just came to really care about him so much that I couldn't let it go. So back to the story at hand. So the next morning after he slept over, we hung out, we drank coffee, and we just kind of like acted like a couple. And it felt really, really nice. It felt so easy. But in the back of my mind, I knew that it was fleeting. So I was gonna be going out of the country a few weeks later, and I had talked to him about that. I talked to him about how I was so excited for my trip. And then I didn't hear from him at all. Like in the weeks after, I thought at the very least he would text me like to say bon voyage or something, like some indication, but nothing. Radio silence, nothing from him. And again, I was crushed. I was really upset, even though what am I upset about? What does this guy owe me? Like I have nothing with him. So another few months go by and the same things, like honestly, just to keep the story short, the same thing would keep happening with him, where we would go months without seeing each other, we would run into each other, we would flirt, and then maybe we'd kiss, and something would happen, and then he'd be gone again. And I would always like get my hopes up. Like one night I was out with my friends for my birthday, and we came back to my apartment, and I don't even know how he ended up there, but he showed up like completely blackout drunk. And I ended up taking care of him the whole night, like ignoring the 20 people that were in my apartment and just like playing nursemaid to him. And he didn't even text me to say thank you for it. And again, I would feel hurt for like weeks and weeks. I would mope about it. I would talk to my friends about it. Then I would get over it. I would start moving on. And then I would see him again. And then like the same thing would happen. And this went on for like a year. Then it came to this point where like, I was kind of like done with it, over it. But anytime he'd be around me or in like the same room as me, I remember one time we were at this really, crowded bar and I'd be talking to other guys and his eyes would just always be on me, like watching me and almost like looking angry and looking sad about the fact that I was talking to another guy when I'm like, what right do you have to be upset that I'm talking to another guy? Like you could have me. Here I am. Take me, I am yours. And he didn't because he couldn't, because he was too damaged. And I realized that and I felt sad for him. Like a friend of mine, I remember I went away on a trip with my friend and I was like so depressed about Kevin the whole time. And she was like, don't you kind of feel sorry for him? Like you're this amazing girl and you're right there. And he just can't. He can't be with you because of whatever is going on in his head. And I'm like, yeah, that is sad, but how do I fix him? How do I change it? Like, how can I fix this? So after this one, like unfortunate weekend of like the whole time, like him being upset, I was talking to other guys and me being upset that like he was upset. I was like, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? I have spent a year pining for, moping over, chasing after a guy that I never even had to begin with. He was never my boyfriend. He was never anything to me. We went on 2 dates and then he dumped me. Like, what am I doing to myself? And why am I doing this? So why did I stay? Why did I, of all people, stay? I was a relationship writer, a successful one, with books that were bestsellers on Amazon about relationships. I mean, at this point in my career, I like felt like a fraud because I'm like giving all this amazing advice and my personal life was like a a mess. And I was just like, what am I doing? I recognized it. But then I got to this point after it had been almost a full year from our first date to like the end of it, where I was like, what am I doing here? What am I doing? Why do I keep going back to this guy? Why do I keep letting this happen? Because I was allowing it to happen. I can't really blame him. He didn't do anything. I wanted it. So it occurred to me at that point in time that I have never really been in a relationship that was mutual. Either it would be me chasing after the damage cases, and even when you catch a damage case, you can never really have him. Like, you can be in a relationship with a damage case, but he's still not yours. Or it would be a guy like completely obsessed with me and me not interested whatsoever. There was never that feeling of like mutual attraction. And I wondered why. And I realized a lot of it had to do with my self-esteem and with deep down not really feeling worthy. So I was going after guys who made me feel unworthy. And that kind of validated the way I already felt about myself, because the subconscious mind is always looking to prove itself right. So I was essentially sabotaging myself. I was sabotaging my chances of getting what it was I truly wanted. I also realized I was chasing the high. I was chasing the ego boost. I wanted that validation, because it's easier to chase a high than it is to actually deconstruct yourself, deconstruct your belief systems, and remake them so that you can have that foundation to build healthy self-esteem upon. It's much easier to take the easy way out, to get the cheap high, rather than working on getting to that place of actually building your self-esteem and actually finding happiness within yourself. I mean, why build your self-esteem? It's way more validating to find a guy who can't commit and be the woman who inspires him to commit, right? So I'm just gonna make that my sole mission in life. And speaking of, trying to turn him around gave me a sense of purpose. That's another reason we go for these damage cases. They fulfill some need within us. And it kind of made me feel like I was living out my purpose and trying to heal this guy. And I guess I was able to channel that into a more meaningful direction by redirecting myself after the whole thing with him fell apart to really focusing on my career and really being good at it and really looking at myself and looking at where I was going wrong and really using that to create relationship content that would really help people. I also asked myself a lot of the really hard questions. What was I getting out of this relationship with Kevin, if you can even call it a relationship? Why was I so drawn to him even though I objectively knew he wasn't good for me? What had he ever even given me? I've given him plenty, but what had he ever given me? He didn't even give me a thank you text after I spent the whole night of my birthday taking care of his drunk self. I was getting nothing out of this relationship except for temporary validation and a temporary ego boost anytime he seemed to reciprocate my interest. And I realized how pathetic that was, especially at the stage in life that I was in. I wasn't in my early 20s anymore. This behavior wasn't cute anymore. At that point in my life, I knew I wanted to settle down. I knew I wanted to get married and have kids someday. And I knew that this was not the path that was gonna take me there. I knew that this was just a distraction, that this was just a waste of time. Essentially, I was sabotaging myself. And that's what a lot of us do, which is so ironic, because it's like there's something that we want and we know we want it, and yet we completely throw ourselves under the bus and prevent ourselves from getting that. Maybe it's because we don't think that we could ever really have it. Maybe we don't think that we deserve it. I also looked at why I kept going back to him. Like, I kept learning the lesson with him and then going back again and again. And I realized that the reason for this was my life needed some serious sorting out at that point. And he was such a distraction from that. What's more distracting than getting lost in someone else's drama? That's what was so enticing to me. It was so much easier to just get lost in him and all that drama and attribute any negative feeling I had to that relationship and it falling apart and me not hearing from him. And it was just like easy to focus on how can I get him back and how can I win him over and how can I be the girl that he wants and how can I help him deal from this issue and this thing that happened in his childhood. It was just so much easier to think about that instead of thinking about myself and thinking about what I needed to work on within myself. Because it's very easy to say work on yourself. I mean, I say it to you guys all the time, but it's much harder to do it. I mean, I give you guys that advice. I need that advice as well. I mean, I'm talking to myself as much as I'm talking to you. Another thing with Kevin, and this is another reason why we get so drawn into the damage cases, is that I connected to him in a deep way. I think I felt this darkness within me and this sadness within me, and he had a lot of that. And so I kind of felt less alone in those feelings. I related to him, and that just made me feel okay. It made me feel more okay in this dark place that I was in, because he was in it too. And through him, I came to the realization that I want a partner, not a project. Now, side note, I know you guys may have seen that quote floating around and it's being like attributed to Julia Roberts, and I don't know if she came up with it on her own, but that was mine. That came from me. Honestly, I spoke this out to my friends so many times. If you go back years and years to the content that I wrote after the whole Kevin debacle, that was my line. That was my mantra. That is what I told myself to get myself through it. So yeah, so it's attributed to me, not Julia. Anyway, I said, I want a partner, not a project. And I would pass that quote on to my friends. So when everyone, okay, I'm not even gonna talk about that anymore, about Julia, but anytime any of my friends would see that, they would be like, that's your line. But it's true. I did not want someone I had to fix. And once I saw it for what it was, it lost all appeal to me. So I spent that whole summer after my final Kevin encounter completely working on myself, working on my happiness, working on my physical self. I was exercising a lot. I looked really good, working on my career, talking to therapists or relationship coaches or just anybody who had insights into relationships and emotionally damaged people and why we go after those kinds of people. And I journaled a lot. I did a lot of writing, and I really got to a place where I felt so on top of my game, where I felt like I am happy, I feel good about myself. And even more than that, I like myself. I actually like myself. That was the first time I felt that way in a really long time. And just when I was in that place, I ran into my ex-boyfriend from high school in Central Park and we started dating again. And within 6 months we got engaged, and within a year we were married. So yeah, that was definitely a success story in terms of working on myself, which is something I tell you guys because it's so important. Because who knows how it would have went with my ex if I hadn't gotten to that place of being, really emotionally healthy for probably the first time in my life. Okay, now we've talked a lot about me. Let's talk a little bit about you. Why do you keep going after the damage cases? One possibility is that you're sabotaging yourself, like I touched on earlier. Maybe deep down, you don't think that you deserve a loving, happy relationship. Maybe that mirrors your interactions with your parents. Maybe your father never made you feel like you were good enough, so you feel like no man will ever think that you're good enough, so you choose guys who won't ever think that you're good enough. A lot of this goes back to our childhood, honestly. There's a really great book on this. It's called Getting the Love You Want, and it basically talks about how our childhood completely screw us up, essentially, and we try to repair all those wounds from childhood in our adult relationships just as a way to get it right the second time around. The subconscious mind is always looking to prove itself right. That's why if you feel like you are unattractive, it doesn't matter if 99 people tell you that you're pretty in one day. If there's one person that says you're unattractive, you're gonna say, see, I knew it, I knew I was unattractive. You will not focus on those 99 other compliments. So whenever you feel your mind pouncing on anything negative that you hear, that's your subconscious at work, because that's how you feel about yourself deep down. So try to train yourself to identify when that happens so that you'll understand the faulty beliefs you have about yourself that are really working against you. Another reason you might be going for the damage cases is because you have what I call ECD, excessive compassion disorder. You see the good guy that he could be, and you really want to extract that out of him. And you have so much compassion for all the hard things that he's been through, because damage cases have usually been through a lot of hard things. Maybe it was their parents' relationship. Maybe their parents had a difficult divorce. Maybe one of their parents passed away when they were really young. Maybe they had really traumatic relationships. Maybe they do have, mental health problems. And you feel so compassionate, you want to help them. But you can only help someone who also wants to help himself. Of course, we all have our damage. All of us are damage cases to a certain extent. No one really arrives at adulthood fully emotionally healed and full and fulfilled. We all have something. The question is, how much are you willing to deal with it? The reason I deem damage cases as undateable, because the damage cases are usually not working on it. They are usually just content in whatever little land they're living in. They're content being commitment phobes. And the fact is, I've dated so many damage cases, and all of them are still single. And I've been married for 5 years. And from what I've heard, a lot of them are still behaving the exact same way that they were 10 years ago or whatever it was when I dated them. It's just the same patterns because they're not dealing with it. When you fully try to fix a damage case, one of two things will happen. Either you'll succeed and you'll help him get over his issues, and then he'll dump you because he's come to associate you with that really painful, bad point in his life, and he'll just leave you for someone else, or he won't get fixed, and you'll just end up in this relationship that is a complete dead end that drags on and on and on. Neither one of these is a good outcome for you. The solution is to identify your patterns and to deconstruct them. Look back on your past relationships. Look back on the guys that you've dated. Write them out, write each one and what went wrong, and try to look for the patterns. And then try to identify why you keep going after these kinds of guys. What need is it fulfilling for you? Because that's the important thing. It is fulfilling some sort of emotional need. Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't keep doing this to yourself. So really identify what emotional itch those types of guys are scratching for you. And once you've identified it, fix it. Fix it by whatever means necessary. It might mean reading a good self-help book. It might mean finding a really good therapist. But it's so important because if you don't fix it, you're just gonna keep repeating the cycle over and over again, and you're just hurting yourself if you do. All right, so what did you guys think about this video? I know it was a little bit different, but I feel like this was a fun, like little story time type thing. What has your experience been like with damage cases and what have you learned from it? I think that we need to form a little support group here for women recovering damage case addicts and women who aspire to recover from the damage case addiction. So share your thoughts and your feedback in the comment section. I love hearing from you guys. Make sure to give this video a like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.